Hello, welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society webinar series. Today's panel discussion, How Manufacturing Looks in Today's New Normal, is sponsored and moderated by Vertex. Vertex Software's cloud-based digital twin platform fuels team collaboration by unlocking 3D data, providing aligned visuals across engineering, procurement, manufacturing, sales, marketing, service, and the supply chain. My name is Courtney McWhirter. I will be your host for today. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager for Digital Enterprise Society. If you have any questions about the organization or how to get involved, I am happy to help you. Digital Enterprise Society is a new nonprofit member association organized to enable transformation of product development, design, delivery, and maintenance throughout the digital enterprise, regardless of software tools used. We are dedicated to the transformation of the manufacturing enterprise workforce. We have an awesome discussion for you today. Really excited for our panelists. And if you have any questions for them, we will be doing an audience Q&A following the moderated discussion. If you have any questions, just put them in the questions box and be sure to call out who your question is for. We'd really appreciate that. And without further delay, I'm going to introduce you to today's moderator and panelists. Mike Sellberg is Executive VP and Chief of Staff at Vertex Software, a visual collaboration platform for the digital twin. With a BS in mechanical engineering and MS in engineering mechanics, he started his career in the PLM industry at Engineering Animation Inc. and later led the Siemens PLM Team Center product management team. Natalie Straup is an Associate Technical Fellow in Product Lifecycle Management at Boeing Defense, Space, and Strategy. She started out as a structural dynamicist, but frustration with the current toolset led her down a 14-year and running career in bill of material management and CAD integrations. She is also secretary of AIAA, Design Engineering Integration Committee. Nicholas Holian has over 20 years in experience in engineering, IT, and global service provider roles, with 5 years of those in IT management, working through the merging, acquisition, and divesting of Compaq to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, to DXC Technology. He is currently the Chief Technology Officer at DXC for the auto industry. While currently leading DXC's auto industry, he has many years of experience in aerospace, design, high-tech energy, utilities, oil, gas, consumer packaged goods, manufacturing, and industrial industries. Last but not least, Ryan McVeigh. Ryan is a digital transformation knight, helping to educate organizations about the digital thread, currently working for a global medical device and medical supply company to implement and connect systems to foster a medical digital thread. So that being said, I will hand it over to Mike.
There we go. Thank you, Courtney. I got off the mute button there. One of the many challenges we're working from home here. But as everyone knows, first of all, I'd like to thank the panelists and Courtney. I'm looking forward to this conversation. The last 3 to 4 months have been a constant stream of change in everyone's personal and professional lives. I think probably for most of us, that the biggest shift being moving from our office environment into the home environment. Using remote conferencing and screen sharing applications, one of which we're using today. And so really what I'd like to start out with today is to understand and hear how your companies are adapting to everyday tasks in engineering and manufacturing, anywhere from design review to, customer engagement and customer conversations, to supply chain collaboration, shop floor inspections, all the things that maybe you took for granted being in the actual building that you worked at, and help us understand how you're adapting and how your companies are adapting. Ryan, if you wouldn't mind getting us kicked off with Cantel's experience.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah, just like every other company out there, we're adapting to the new norm of working from home, if you will. Fortunately for Cantel, we've actually been very flexible with our workforces. We're a heavy user of Zoom even prior to this. I would probably say we're extremely heavy with Zoom. So, having collaboration meetings with supply chain and things like that has been fairly normal, just exactly what we're doing here. As far as like for design reviews for the product development groups and the continuing engineering groups, they've been using a combination of their CAD visualization tools along with tools like GoToMeeting and Zoom and things like that. For markups, I would say some users are adept enough that they're using OneNote and screen captures to kind of document their meetings. So they'll use OneNote as a meeting utility and then capture the screen images and do the markups on the images right there in OneNote. They also use Word templates for that as well. Our supply chain, unfortunately, is still reliant on 2D, so PDFs, very heavily in PDFs. So nothing's really changed for the supply chain as far as what we've been supplying to our supply chain. Shop floor is a different story. As we all know, we have the social distancing impacts. We've had to do quite a bit of plant layout and more, I guess, a larger focus on how many people are in specific areas and how often they cross on the floors. We've primarily been using just manual studies for that. We don't have any real tools for software tools for shop floor management when it comes to that. I think that's really about it. Yeah, I think that's probably about it for collaboration and supply chain and design reviews.
So assembly line automation and streamlining tools have not been adapted yet for COVID social distancing. Is that what you're saying on the shop floor, right? It's tough, right?
For software, yes. I mean, they've done manual inspections and timing of people and things like that, and looking for high traffic areas to alleviate some of those areas. But that's all done manually with the manufacturing engineers.
Yep. I've heard the resurge of video and good old stopwatch studies on the shop floor to track some of that stuff. So that's interesting. Very good.
Exactly.
So Nicholas, I'm curious into what you've been seeing both in your company and some of your customer clients. What are you hearing in this area?
Yeah, I would say the first thing which we're really seeing, and again, this is for both DXC and for a lot of the customers that we support, is really kind of a first focus on employee engagement. Obviously, with everybody being dispersed to the winds, it's really engaging employees first because they're the ones who are supporting the customers ultimately. And so making sure that they're really involved in everything and really adapting to the kind of the work from home processes. And so while we're all using the technologies like, WebEx and Zoom and all these other ones, I've seen a major transition as we are supporting our customers and as in even internal meetings of really using video sharing technologies. So a lot of our meetings previously were audio only, and now almost all of our meetings are, face to face using video streaming and everything. So everybody's had to brush up on, what does their backgrounds look like and how do they, do things. And so keeping those types of things, I've seen also in DXC and again in our customers, introduction of a whole different series of meetings, water cooler talks. So trying to bring that in previous experience that was there in the workforce, in the office, back to the home. So we don't obviously see each other, but we have purposely set up a lot of meetings within DXC at least, where we have water cooler talks. They're open forums. That's every Friday, half an hour, every Monday, half an hour. And just again, enable that employee engagement where people just have a free form talk. There's no agenda, there's no specific topics, but it's really just trying to make sure that people are engaged and able to have that, kind of social time outside of the work time and the dedicated. As far as collaborations, one of the things that we're seeing with a lot of our customers, since we don't design products, but really helping our customers introduce other types of collaboration tools. So as Ryan mentioned, a lot of our customers are definitely using, the video sharing technologies, OneNote type technologies, but there are other remote-based protocols that allow simultaneous design reviews and other types of those technologies. So the ability to what we call share the puck. So within a span of a fraction of a second, if I stop moving my keyboard or my mouse, somebody can then take control of it. And so as many people are involved in that sharing session, it gives you the ability to dynamically work very interactively on a problem, where when you're talking about traditional video sharing like Zoom or, Skype or Teams, you have to then share your screen, then you got to enable somebody to have control, and the control in those types of environments are very kind of kludgy in terms of the latency and the other experience. So introducing that collaborative capabilities, especially during design reviews, where as I'm tweaking a design, I want to stop and someone else can come in there and adjust, and we can interact with more live. I think that's kind of one of the big, introductions that we've really tried to help people, work with and everything from a design review perspective. So that's kind of the big thing. From a supply chain perspective, or really kind of the manufacturing floor, we're seeing a couple different things. We are seeing a lot of companies introducing, software-based or beacon technologies. So people are associated to a non-user identifiable device, since we have, personal and, protection and everything. But the ability for that beacon to track people throughout the entire manufacturing floor, we call social distancing applications, to make sure that there's an audible alarm and the people can know the fact that somebody's approaching their sphere of influence. And also it tracks without the day, so you automatically see where the hotspots are. Obviously not every company is doing that, but it's becoming a more prevalent type of activity, whether it be Bluetooth technology, network beacon technology, using your cell phone, or other types of things. And so they neutralize the data, so that way reporting is just saying, what are we doing from a health perspective? I think one thing companies need to really understand is that every company is different. Every manufacturing floor is different. So thermal imaging or thermal scanning to, detect people's temperatures, while in one part of the country where it's a very warm climate, people adjust fairly quickly as they're moving, from an inside outside type of environment. Those types of technologies work very quickly. If you're coming from an extremely cold environment into a warm building, obviously you need time for those temperatures to adjust. So understanding layouts and configurations of manufacturing floors and how to best adopt these different technologies to make sure that, you don't perceive that you have addressed the situation, but in fact, you've actually kind of hidden, people who might be symptomatic and again, not showing up because they're passing too quickly through like a scan zone. So huge amount of changes that are occurring out there. And like I said, I think that really the first focus of a lot of companies is ensure that their own employees are engaged and increasing the engagement on that level.
That's great. Thank you. I think you mentioned kind of the more co-creation type software and passing the puck. And I think, one of the things, maybe not necessarily the COVID, but maybe it's my age, I don't know, but getting used to, in my case, it's like having 5 people edit the same paragraph in one of my Google Docs. So I can't imagine what it must be like for 3 or 4 engineers to be going at it on one design. It must be a little computer gamish at times, I bet. But those technologies are certainly making a huge difference for sure. I think thanks for your initial thoughts, both of you. I think it is, I think the social aspect and what we do to keep our employees involved is very important. And, just like everyone has to kind of get their groove working from home is also a big challenge, whether it be, controlling pets, or you've got kids home from college or kids home from high school or junior high or whatnot, and having to manage all that. So lots of challenges for sure. So I think one thing I'm interested in is, it's one thing to work within kind of your own department. Remote work is certainly difficult. And obviously as you work with your own department, it might not be as tough as working with, let's say, cross-functional groups or suppliers, particularly across locations and time zones. And so, Natalie, I'd love to hear how Boeing and your teams are kind of getting through some of those cross-functional and cross-geography work challenges while being at home.
Thanks. I've been working from home for a couple of years now, and I'm used to working between countries and kind of these things. So when we first shut down on March 16th, we sort of had the feeling that we were old hat at this and we had it all figured out, and, a fairly large company. What we figured out very quickly, though, was that people have a range of bandwidth and providers. And that quickly became a challenge. You know, your satellite internet access might have been fine for what you were doing before, but now you're home, you're doing CAD design and not so much. Another thing we had was navigating the various countries and their different regulations. So, for example, we were working heavily with a team in India, and all of a sudden nobody could work. They weren't, you know, given a heads up like we were in the United States that you're going to be, you know, home next week. It was, you know, you went home that night and the next morning you woke up and you couldn't go anywhere. So we had to kind of navigate what was going on there. The different time zones, I think we've been relatively okay because we were already dealing with that pre-COVID. We usually have some core work hours and agreed to times ahead of time, so nobody's bothering you at 3 a.m. Unless you're expected to be on then. Another major problem we had was we had been moving more towards webcams and virtual sharing and things like that. But just with the sheer amount of employees we had, it brought our system to its knees very quickly those first few days. So those of us that were old hat and had been, you know, sharing in WebEx for 7-8 hours a day for years, suddenly found that the WebEx was completely shut down. We had to get Cisco in very fast to increase some of our infrastructure and fix those problems. Those are, you know, 3 months in, we're more or less moving much faster, but we still find some of those infrastructure problems here and there. Overall, though, the sharing has been going very well. There's teams that we never thought would be able to do virtual work that have been doing virtual work very successfully. Productivity has actually not taken nearly the hit that we expected it to. Manufacturing is a little bit of a different story just based on how many people you can have in the shop at one time. We can't, you know, ship the parts home for them to work on, but
Yeah,
that's kind of where we are.
you're certainly having worked from home for a couple of years. You're kind of used to this, but I'm sure the other panelists and folks in the audience can respect the occasional. I'm going to work from home today, so I can actually get something done. You know, get out of a few meetings and get some alone time. So that's certainly been one advantage to working from home is you can certainly put your head down and get busy on something a little easier than being in an office. That's for sure. So I'm curious, Ryan, have you guys sounded like you were using quite a bit of technology and maybe moving some big data around. Did you guys run into some of the technology or internet or any data kind of sharing challenges that Natalie and Boeing did?
Oh yeah. When you're dealing with, like you said, when you're dealing with your local ISP and you've got people with different levels of laptops and things of that nature, it was a big challenge. We actually had an issue where when we closed our offices, we had to go out and purchase close to 250, I want to say it was about 200 laptops, because those employees all had desktop machines. So we didn't want them in the office, so we went out and had to buy hardware for them. We had to configure, emergency configurations, and then we had to kind of explain how the connectivity and all of that works with these users because they weren't used to this at all. So there was a big training issue with that. There's definitely challenges with VPN. Natalie mentioned some of them with just, too much information coming down the pipe. The pipes are only so big, so you get backups and you get latency. We've had issues with some of our CAD tools connecting to their databases from remote sites. We've worked with our network people and the router folks and the router software folks to get those issues resolved for the most part, but you still have those users that may be out in, a more rural situation and their speeds just really aren't fast enough. But yeah, it's a challenge for everybody. It's a challenge for the users. It's very frustrating for the users. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges you have is getting somebody who's used to just coming in and doing a specific task at work and then taking them home with a new laptop with brand new machines. The change management on that can be a big challenge.
Yeah, just monitor size alone, right, is a big
Yeah.
difference for some people, right? For sure.
Yeah, yeah. Asset management. Now that you said monitor size, yeah, asset management's an issue too because we've actually allowed staff to come in at specific slots of time during the day, or at least initially, to come get their monitors and things like that from work and actually take them home with them. So people are using their work utilities and hardware at home and making sure that all that makes it back into the building when things come back to the norm.
Yeah, for sure. Vertex did the same thing, and like you said, making sure that you track that and where it's all heading for sure.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thanks for the follow up. I think and thank you, Natalie. I think there are a lot of now is obviously the current situation, which seems somewhat back to the future on the research here lately with COVID-19. Companies are really wrestling with, part-time or permanent work from home, right? As many of your companies are probably doing that. And so, as we've just been talking about, that puts a lot of pressure on IT teams, from asset management to, bandwidth and performance of machines to particularly security. And so, I'm wondering, particularly Nicholas, how are you helping your customers roadmap some of those long-term work from home strategies? And have you been able to test how effective they are so far, or are you just kind of getting started with your clients?
I would say a lot of our customers are in various different stages of that process. So right when this whole event occurred, there was that immediate rush of how do we get, people working from home. And so some of the companies did allow their employees to take their assets home, whether they be laptops, some of them even allowed the desktop environment. But a lot of the customers that we had, that was a prohibitive policy because they did not want that intellectual property leaving their sites. I mean, you go to a home network, it's an unknown environment, a hostile environment compared to most corporate networks where that's perceived, perception, because kids are out there playing and everything else. And plus, once you also go to the home environment, as we've been talking about bandwidth and everything else, my bandwidth in my house is, I purchased at an anticipated certain speed. But one of the things that people don't necessarily realize, or we're educating a lot of our customers on, is yes, you can say that everybody at home has 100 megabits. But suddenly all the kids are at home, and then summer kind of came along and everybody's watching movies and playing games. And so in a certain range around your house, you're all sharing the exact same bandwidth up to the very first, concentrator within whoever your service provider is. Obviously satellites a little differently. And so even though you may be having 100 megabit that you're paying for, if you do a network speed, you might be seeing you're getting 1. And so there's this big fluctuation. So again, companies didn't want to necessarily rely on all these devices leaving their facility, going home, and then having a problems, as Ryan said, with CAD applications working or data transmission working, things like that. So a lot of our customers approach us and says, how can we solve this differently? And so remote visualization was a huge topic with many of our customers, which is BYOD, whatever device you had home, we're going to leave you with that one, or we might buy you an ultra weight tablet or device, something that allows you to project to multiple monitors. And the very first wave was really going through traditional VPN technology because that's what people had. But with a VPN, you're exposing the entire corporate network. So from a security perspective, not everybody liked that idea from the CISO on down, but it was a way to get that very first thing. But you're taking away about half the performance with traditional VPN networks. So the bandwidth, the user interaction is very, hard. And as people were testing it and trying to judge its effectiveness, they were seeing obviously the less ability to move forward through the design process, but something was better than nothing. We all just got sent home. And so there was a transition from that technology over to other technology, gateway technologies, cloud technologies. And what we're really dealing with most of our companies from a road mapping perspective is hybrid. So moving the control layer, the control plane of those technologies, whether they be Citrix or Nutanix or VMware, Horizon, all those technologies have a cloud-based capability to manage the user experience. So I'm going to authenticate to the cloud, but my resource or my cloud connectors with any of those different technologies is still where the resource is. So connecting to the physical desktops that got left behind, connecting to virtual instances directly within the data center. And so it's really changing the limitations of those home networks by giving them an ultra thin connection, still protected, encrypted, everything else. But now you're getting pixel transmissions across the wires, and your design data is staying resident on the physical desktops that had to get left behind, or these new virtual instances that are being created in the data center. Some people are taking it a step further and creating those virtual instances in the cloud, hence the hybrid technology I'm talking about here. But it's really giving those people the experience of the in-office from a user application perspective, but giving them the ability to work from home. And so some of our customers had already begun that transition anyways. Winter occurs in places, you can't always get to the office. And so that was kind of naturally occurring. It definitely, hit the gas pedal, and people really accepted a lot of those technologies. But I think it's still an evolving process. And we're seeing a lot more people, as they're seeing this resurgence, going, we're not coming back to work in June and July. It might be September. It might be, sometime next year. A much heavier emphasis on investigating those virtual technologies and understanding how those come into play. First thing which we really help customers understand is we're not looking at the IT management of those processes. First thing is really helping, again, going back to that first question, the employee experience. Can your employees feel comfortable with not working on their local desktop, but that's just a conduit to a high performance machine within the data center, addressing the security concerns on all those other things. So give them that comfort level that I'm going to change your work location, but I'm actually going to ideally give you a better experience. So that's kind of the office experience. I would say on the manufacturing floor, we're really helping companies do remote assistance or expert assistance. So using virtual technologies, augmented reality technologies, help the people who can't come into those facilities anymore, or where you're only allowed one person in there, to give them an augmented reality capability, what we call remote expert. And so that way you have the expertise there with you, even if you're the only person there. So you might be the only guy in the data center, on the shop floor, in the manufacturing floor, but you still have access to a large collection of experts who can help you. They can see what's going on. They can overlay images and other information for you and guide you through a process. So those are both occurring in both the manufacturing floor as well as the office experience.
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah. So Natalie, both Ryan and Nicholas kind of mentioned VPN and security. Obviously Boeing takes those things very seriously, as most companies do. I think I'm curious, what are some of the challenges you've had in kind of that VPN security area, and also has any of your IT policies changed, or what are you seeing there, just to help people work from home more efficiently and effectively?
I would say that our IT policies haven't changed much with all of this, other than they disabled YouTube and Netflix, I think, in the first couple days from your work computer, which they probably should have done a while ago, just from the sheer bandwidth issue. But I think most of our employees, it's not so much that one person's VPNing in from home. It's that both the husband and the wife, or partners, are VPNing in, and then you might have 2 or 3 kids on Zoom. And those of us with kids, we've all seen multiple security issues with Zoom. Right now, Zoom's policies have changed drastically in the last 3 months. My daughter got bombed, I think, twice in one day, in 2 different classes. So we certainly, had some rigorous password rules and rules about what tools you can use. And now this summer, for the first time, we're having virtual high school interns. So, changing over from a regular intern experience, more traditional, where you're on site and you get to talk to all these different people, trying to enable that collaboration with kids sitting at home. and making sure that they feel engaged and they're working on something challenging, and dealing with, their internet issues, right? So we've been conducting those more on the Zoom side. But it's sort of more of those challenges, I'd say, and then the work-life balance, I think, for a lot of us has gone to pot, because for those, I've noticed a lot of the people that aren't used to working from home, all of a sudden there's that computer that you can just look at 4, 5, 6, at 6 a.m., at 9 p.m. And so it's easy to get sucked into that. And then you notice you're not exercising and your health declines, kind of those things, I'd say. But our security policies have largely remained unchanged because we had so much involved before.
I'm curious, I guess this would be a question to each of you for your companies. You mentioned, health decline. So have your companies taken proactive steps from the wellness standpoint as they're trying to work with people working from home these days? Anything in particular? I know we've done, our company Vertex has changed over our, way our gym membership works, and, obviously, if they're open and those kinds of things, but also looking at a stipend so you can kind of do things on your own that's safe from a COVID perspective. So I was just curious if your companies have done anything like that yet.
We've certainly done another number of health initiatives. We moved to some telehealth apps for people, to make sure that those are widespread and available. There's certainly been initiatives to keep people moving, and lots of webinars on mental health and managing through this whole crisis, and also through our employee engagement groups. Just getting people together and networking, so they don't feel so isolated.
Yeah, I mean, for us here in at Cantel, I mean, one of our major facilities here is in Minneapolis area, and we've actually in Minnesota, we've just actually gotten the okay to open up the gyms and things like that. So our actual gym facility is open. The office area is still open, and you can go in and work if you'd like, but there's still, I guess the main thing is our gym in our building is open, but people are still staying at home. There are some users that are actually driving in the morning to hit the gym and then leaving and coming back home. So we have facilities open for that. But yeah, as Natalie said, there's been a lot of emails for the if you need the mental health and the counseling and things like that, because a lot of people are getting stressed out. We have a lot of younger families, so when you've got people at home with their 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds, along with animals, and trying to do jobs both with the husband and the wife in an enclosed area, it's quite a challenge mentally. So we do have quite a few programs for that kind of stuff.
Great.
Yeah, I would say we have both formal programs, and DXC is definitely supporting very similar things to what Natalie and Ryan are saying. There's the mental side of it, and we're definitely making sure, like we said earlier, water cooler talks, and again, specifically scheduling activities where you have that social bonding and other social interactions. The more senior staff within the company, informally making sure that, beginning of meetings, how's everybody doing? Is everybody, having any specific concerns? And so making sure that people feel that they're, open and welcome to, ask questions and, present information, just not having a good day. And a lot of times, they comment the fact that, hey, if you just need a break, take tomorrow off. We understand the fact that, as Natalie portrayed, a lot of times people who have not traditionally worked from home, suddenly they feel like, 8 hours isn't enough. Suddenly I'm logging 12 hours, 14 hours, and you don't even realize it. And so ensuring the fact that that is an open communication from our senior management to all the employees, saying, make sure you are doing the right thing, you are doing it, the good thing for yourself, and taking the time off appropriate and not working 12, 14, 16-hour days. From a facility standpoint, I mean, our buildings are still closed, but through our employee work at home program, work at perks programs, there are a lot of other things that we're trying to partner with a lot of other companies around the world to offer discounted programs for home health equipment or other type of equipment, so the employees can make those purchases. And then I would say lastly, a lot of our conversations, especially the morning ones or the evening ones, a lot of times we try to start off, and again, more of a senior-led approach with, what are you guys doing? Anybody go out for a run today? And just encourage people to talk about those physical activities and understand the fact that we are all doing it. So there's nothing, weird about it or anything. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock and I was up at 6 o'clock going out for a run, or, I'm knocking off for work at 4:30. I'm going to go out for a swim. And so having that discussion on a more regular basis encourages people to think, well, if everyone else is out there running, maybe I should go out there and do it too. So I think we're trying to approach it from multiple different levels. And again, multiple different tiers within the company, trying to make sure that those are all being addressed from both a mental perspective as well as from a physical perspective.
Thank you, all of you. I appreciate that. That's both mental and physical health through this is certainly of utmost importance. And so thanks for sharing with us how your companies are handling that. Ryan, I did want to ask you from a previous question. I didn't get around to you, but I wanted to ask you in particular what Cantel is doing, either through expanded use of current kind of cloud-based software services, or have you adopted any outside of video sharing, which we've all talked about? Are there any other cloud-based applications that Cantel has adopted throughout this thing?
Yeah, I mean, Cantel has been moving to the cloud quite heavily with all our systems. We're a heavy AWS user, where our PLM tool is actually 100% cloud. We've got 1,800 plus users using PLM. Our CRM tool and our sales tools, those are all cloud-based. So we have, along with all the standard Microsoft Office stuff, as well as all cloud-based. And, like I've mentioned OneNote and Teams and all the different apps that Microsoft is using now. So that's, I think we have a majority of the, I guess you'd call it the more professional softwares are all cloud-based applications. The manufacturing, the CAM tools and things like that are all still, desktop type applications and things like that.
Sure, absolutely. Good. Well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I'm going to throw this out to kind of everybody. So we'll let you fight for the chance to do this one first. But I was curious. We've talked obviously about engineering, manufacturing, and some different areas. Have there been any other particular areas in your business or your company that has been particularly challenging? So I think of field service, or sales, or other jobs that involve traveling and that kind of thing. So in your particular businesses, is there anything that's been a particular challenge in those groups that the engineering may have to interface with, so to speak?
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, go first.
Definitely our field service group, because they're literally going into the hospitals. So yeah, getting them the proper 3D data and the proper work instructions and assembly instructions, and all the MRO tools, if you will, have been quite a challenge, because it's just been quite a challenge for them. I don't really know how to express how big of a challenge it's been for them.
Sure, yeah.
I would say from a services perspective, I mean, obviously, if you just think about social distancing and some of the other things, and companies in general wanting to not allow people into their buildings, as a global service provider, when we have to do things like hardware repairs or new installations, a lot of people are asking, set up new equipment quickly, and you can only have one person there at a time. It makes a challenge from a scheduling perspective, because how do you, normally you'd bring in a team of people and there'd be a person working on the rack and working on the servers and working on the storage, and putting all these components together as a team of people And now you can have one person there at a point in time. And then, when that person leaves, and you can have the next person, and everything gets slowed down because of all the health checking and everything else that's going on there. You got to fill out the questionnaire. So scheduling has become quite a challenge from the field services perspective, organization, and making sure that all that's, orchestrated right, because it's not that the whole group comes in there. And again, if somebody needs to do something while the other person's working, it's not a big deal. If that guy's plugging in the server and the network wire is not there, well, now he can't just sit there and say, hey, can you finish it off real quick before I leave? He needs to physically leave so the next person can come in. So, and every data center is different in terms of their policies and what they do and do not allow us to do. So that's become quite a challenge. Obviously, from a sales perspective, we're used to meeting people and talking to people and shaking hands and doing all those type of things. And plus, people are, with everything being shut down, a lot of businesses were impacting their own production. So they're kind of monitoring and understanding, where do we spend our money? So I think there's a little more scrutiny around, how money is being spent, better justification, and setting up for long term. So projects that were not anticipated to be funded this year, like thermal imaging systems to scan employees, suddenly those became a priority as opposed to the new storage that was coming in. We got to work on the networking and VPN tunnels and gateways and connectors and all those kind of things. So a lot of budget shifting occurring. Well, we had to adopt and, change, pretty quickly to support all the customer needs as they suddenly change, and make sure that we were there for them and supporting those. At the same time, helping them understand where they need to do some work where they historically wouldn't have done it, because though their policy doesn't allow us to come on site, so we can remote support you and remote guide you on certain setups, we can't necessarily be there in person. So a lot of dynamics as a GSI really changed in terms of how we operate. And again, we had to flex and make sure we met the needs of our customers.
Very good.
I'd say from our perspective, it's been a challenge not only with the dramatically shifting customer priorities and shifting customer orders, especially on the commercial side. We're also very limited into how many people we can have on site for manufacturing, production, not just within the social distancing guidelines, but with the amount of PPE we're required to provide. Making sure that we have enough equipment for everybody to be on the site. So we've had to kind of adopt a transitional approach for phasing people back in over the summer based on, we've reconfigured a lot to produce our own PPE and PPE for hospitals where those people would have been making airplane parts, 4 months ago. So that's been a little bit of a challenge as well, I'd say.
Absolutely. Yeah, Nicholas, I think I was talking to our VP of sales the other day, and he's like, I'm going to view sales travel budgets as a whole new light once we come out of this thing, because I think everybody's kind of adapted to be able to try to do that craft online, though it's certainly easier in person for sure. But certainly some efficiencies to be had. So I think that's it for the prepared questions that we had. I think I want to hand it back over. I really appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully we've got some questions coming into Courtney, and I'll hand it over to her for some live audience questions.
Well, thank you, Mike, for moderating for us, and thank you again to all of our panelists. If you do have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the questions box. We're happy to take those and ask the panelists for you. One that I did have come in for Natalie, and then after we hear from Natalie, if anybody else would like to answer as well. How are you currently gauging your employee satisfaction and empowerment with work from home?
We've sent out a number of surveys for people, not just about, the first round of surveys was, do you have all the equipment you need? Are you short on equipment? Are you finding problems with your existing equipment at home? What do you feel you can do versus, what might we automatically assume you can do? The second round of surveys was more about, what are you dealing with at home? Are you trying to manage your kids? Are you trying to manage your pets? Are you, how many of you are VPNing in? For my case, it's me and my husband are different companies, different VPNs. We ended up wiring the house to handle this whole situation. Um, subsequent surveys have been more on, okay, how's your mental health? Have any, we're actively tracking the number of cases of COVID and where they are, but, return to work surveys, like I said, the mental health, I guess, previously, we're trying to track that as well as the more technical issues of hardware and infrastructure.
Thanks, Natalie. Nicholas, Ryan, do you have any additional thoughts?
No, I mean, what Boeing is doing is pretty much what we've been receiving as well, is lots of surveys, lots of time with your managers as well. We're doing probably a lot more one-on-one 15-minute type sessions with our managers than we ever have in the past. So.
Yeah, I would say we haven't had as much on the one-on-one. We've had more groups, so town hall meetings, all hands meetings.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more of those meetings have definitely occurred to present information and allow employees an opportunity to ask questions, so they can hear that they're not the only ones with those questions. They're not the only ones with those concerns. And as Natalie said, once we get down to the lower levels within the organization, with your direct manager and his staff, or even one level up, what are you guys experiencing? What's going on at the house? Again, as we transition from the school year with the kids working from home, where at least they were somewhat occupied with the schoolwork, to now going into the summer work where they're less occupied, helping people understand, how to adapt to those situations and understand where there are limits and where people need help. And there's that constant request out from our senior management: if you need help, reach out, so that people don't get to the point of stressing or breaking. But there's always that constant, request from management: please reach out to your manager, your other people, and ensure the fact that you're getting the help that you need, not just with your daily activities, but with, anything else that's occurring associated with the work from home, with COVID, especially if people are impacted or directly affected by it, and those types of activities. So I would say a lot of it's really coming through, more of that employee engagement through, again, town halls and other types of meetings at a group level.
Great, thank you all for your responses on that. I did have somebody ask in the chat that I just wanted to, or in the questions box. So again, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in there, and I'll be asking them of the panelists. So did you see any need for how machining processes are handled? Do the operators have to manage their machines? Does it need different configurations or any pressure on takt times?
I would say from our standpoint, the operators are still doing what they need to do. We've just been, like I say, making sure that they're social distancing when they need to. Not much has changed on the manufacturing floor when it comes to, their machining processes and things, because we're medical. We have to follow a specific regiment. We're highly regulated in that. So no, not for us. Natalie?
Go ahead, Nicholas.
So I was going to say, we don't manufacture anything, but obviously across the various different industries that DXE supports, it varies quite a bit. A lot of the automotive companies you can read out there in the press really shifted, as Natalie indicated with her own company, have shifted to creation of medical devices. So obviously quite a change in the factory production lines as they've shifted over from making cars or other types of things to making, masks and everything else. So that was quite a change. As we talked about earlier with the remote expert, introducing new technologies onto the floor, so that way operators still had access to the experts, even if they were the lone person on the floor. And then as far as changing the processes within the manufacturing floor, a lot of companies initially shut down almost completely with the introduction of COVID and all the restrictions, and they've been very slowly spinning back up. And so understanding how to dynamically change your factory floor to be able to meet the shifting of demand. Are you opening up at 10%, 20%, 30%? Well, that's just the factory floor. If you had initially, everything coming on demand, well, then you have your tier 1 suppliers and your tier 2 suppliers, and all the way down the line, all of them have to adjust. So the supply chain is really having to understand how to flex a lot more dynamically, because each individual day, it's not just crank out as many cars or as many planes or as many, medical devices or those type of things. So it's a much more dynamic world. And so I think companies are really trying to understand how to flex a lot better and how to introduce technologies that allow them to flex a lot better. So that way they can meet this kind of, moving target, as opposed to all hands on board, make as many as you can every single day with 2-3 shifts. Now it's, variable shifts with variable production quantity.
I don't think directly, other than our, things are more controlled. Other, whether we have an active COVID case in the factory and we have to shut down for 14 days in that area and clean. That's happened a couple times. But one positive thing to come out of all of this is they started a COVID idea board on how Boeing could help, things that we could do different. And that led to some things that you can go look up. I think it's in Forbes on some changes that we're making to airplanes to make the airflow better and cleaner. And it's also led to some production improvements that people finally had the time to think of, and submitted to that idea board that has well over 1,000 ideas. And they've had the time to investigate those ideas and see which ones they could implement. So it was sort of a crowdsourcing thing that's still going very strong 3 months in.
Awesome. We'll definitely check that article out. Another question that came in through the questions box that I can personally relate to, and this was something that I took care of even before COVID, but anyone else having upload issues? I know just the working day-to-day stuff can be tricky sometimes, but then it's getting the big projects uploaded. I know I personally had an issue with that and had to readjust my internet here at home as well, but that was one question we had. Any upload issues?
I don't think I've had any upload issues specifically, but I have definitely had to change my backup time. I couldn't have it back up in the middle of the day anymore because that would throttle my speed. But like I said, since we rewired the house and hardwired in where previously we were working over Wi-Fi, it hasn't been so bad.
I'd say from a DXE and what we're doing, and again, supporting our customers, is really helping people understand, when during the day do you want to do certain activities, where historically people who did work from home, you could pretty much do anything you wanted for the most part any time during the day, maybe, 5 o'clock when all the kids are coming home, or, historically there were bad times, but it was generally kind of a, fair game. Now with everything occurring within, our individual houses and our individual subdivisions, I mean, there are certain times that are very impactful. So you look for opportunities, during the later part of the day, maybe during the lunchtime, where you kind of understand within your own individual, region or area, what are good times to do certain activities, what times don't work as well because everybody's watching movies or streaming and everything, like I said. So there's the home layer. As Natalie said, people are going to more wired networks, kind of going old school in terms of that, as opposed to the Wi-Fi and those types of activities. And then there's your subdivision, and there's further out there. So understanding the fact that all the outside providers are obviously adjusting to the situation as well. But in terms of specifically, uploading and downloading activities, it varies a lot throughout the day. So understanding when do you want to try and tackle some of those problems, and kind of building those into your schedule so that way you plan for them, as opposed to, trying to do it more ad hoc and sometimes suffering from some of those issues.
Thanks, guys. We did have one more come in through the chat, and then I have one final one that I'd like to wrap up with. How is the laptop hardware software issues, and how is it handled if the technician has to look into each person's case?
If it's from like a hardware failure standpoint, we still have to take the equipment back into the office. So you drive it in and do it. The laptop I'm using has been replaced twice so far. So yeah, from a software and support type issues, we're using Microsoft Teams and other screen sharing applications for that.
Yeah, I would say different customers of ours and ourselves included, it kind of depends on the nature of the hardware failure. If it's something that allows, you to be able to get along, you schedule time to go back to the office. If it's a critical failure, laptop died, it's an overnight shipping of a new laptop, you restore from backup and you kind of continue on. But a lot of our customers are definitely, scheduling tech bars and tech hours where you can bring in your, gear and either ask a question or address a specific issue or, some type of failure.
Yeah, I'd say we're the same along those lines. We have local laptop support centers where you can take hardware into exchange. If you have a current COVID test pending or something like that, you can order hardware with the approval of your manager and get it shipped directly to your home for hardware failures. But we also have hardware surveys that we use to kind of diagnose the issue. Any kind of software issue is going to be through our usual process where you might do screen sharing or giving the technician virtual control while you watch and make sure your other stuff's shut down.
Thank you all. I'm going to just wrap up with this one last question. What are some of the biggest inefficiencies you've uncovered while working remotely, personally?
Well, okay, so me personally, I've definitely introduced different signs on my door. So that way people know when they can interrupt me in a meeting that's non-critical. Currently it says webinar, please do not come in, So it's really, again, engaging with the family and making sure that there's time for the family and that, I just don't disappear, at 8 o'clock in the morning and, come back down at, 8 o'clock at night or something. So working from that, and then just also another challenge that I think a lot of people don't understand when you transition to work from home. Those of us who've been doing it for some time, these little headsets here are limited on batteries, and so having backups and stuff like that, and just being aware that so many different companies are using so many different technologies in terms of web sharing and other type things, and being aware of the fact that you might have your teams up, but now it's a Skype meeting, and then you're going to go to a WebEx meeting, and then you're going to go to a GoTo meeting, and next thing you know, you're going to have 5 or 6 different meeting technologies, and sometimes they're interfering with each other, and so kind of taking that time to kind of clear out the computer and making sure you shut down various different applications, so that way you don't end up fighting for 2 or 3 or sometimes 10 minutes trying to get your meeting up and running. Or as we've even very mildly seen here today, you're talking and suddenly you realize that you're on mute. So just kind of adjusting to each of the different tools and technologies and everything, and making sure that work-home life balance is there and that all the different technologies are not interfering, but they're actually still supporting your ability to move forward during the day.
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's knowing when to stop for the day. Because I have a bad habit of starting at 8, going to 4:35, having dinner, seeing the family, getting back on at 8 o'clock at night, and going to bed at 12, 1 in the morning again, and then starting back up again because you feel like I didn't get enough done today. Well, there's always another day, and when you were at work, it always rolled over, but you feel like because you are at home, that you need to physically do more than what you would at work. I guess that's mine anyway. Midwest work ethic, what can I say?
I'd say my single biggest challenge was really actually my daughter, who during the school year went from being the honor student that we sort of just left alone and she was fine, to about a month in, some very severe depression and anxiety. And, I found myself during the last 3 weeks of the school year having to take 2.5 hours of sick time to get her through her Zoom classes. Constantly fielding calls from the teachers and the principal about, making sure that she was there, that she was participating. That really took a toll. So I would say don't discount, what your family members are going through. It's a very real challenge. I'm gonna say I'm kind of apprehensive about what in the world is gonna happen in the fall. I might have to hire some outside help to get her through that, Other than that, you know, sort of the bandwidth issues in the beginning were kind of rough with all of, you know, with over 100,000 employees trying to log on and VPN at the same time. But those things are much more easier to overcome than the family issues that so many of us are going through today.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to hear that, Natalie, and hope she's enjoying her summer vacation so far. So, well, thank you all again for being panelists today on our webinar. I think those were the questions we had, and we're just after 3, so I don't want to keep you any longer. Once again, I just want to thank Vertex for being our sponsor today, and our moderator. Thank you, Mike. And thank you again to all of our panelists. We appreciate you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Courtney.
you.
Thank you.
Also, just to let everybody know, Digital Enterprise Society does have a podcast. Our Digital Enterprise Society podcast airs new episodes every Wednesday. You can find them on your favorite podcast streaming platforms. Just a reminder, today's webinar will also be available as a recording on our website. Should be up no later than tomorrow. So to look out for that. You can also find previous webinars on the website as well. And again, my name is Courtney McWhirter. If you have any questions about Digital Enterprise Society, I am happy to help. You can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And once again, just a reminder that Digital Enterprise Society is a new nonprofit member association organized to enable transformation of product development, design, delivery, and maintenance throughout the digital enterprise, regardless of software tools used. We are dedicated to the transformation of the enterprise manufacturing workforce. Visit digitalenterprisesociety.org to learn more. Thank you all again for being here today, and thanks to our panelists and our sponsor, Vertex. Have a great day.
Thank you.